Sir Kenneth, what I say, good evening, it's after 6. You all know that I am kept on the straight and narrow. Sir Kenneth and Lady Hall, we have the representative from the Indian High Commission. We have our deans, we have at least one dean, and I'm going to get in trouble if I start naming people, so I just want to also say welcome to the persons from the diaspora that we are streaming to. Clearly, I am not the principal, and I am not Professor Weber, who is chairing this function. However, he is still caught at the Ministry of Education discussions, and therefore has asked that I start. UWI has a tradition of research. Academics have a tradition of research. It's called publish or perish. Over the years, UWI has gotten us as academics to think about research from the point of view of making an impact. Research Day was born 20 years ago, thanks to Sir Kenneth, who is with us, as he has been for. You must be one of the few people that have been to every Research Day. Almost. I know of one other staff member, and she was in your office, who told me she came here the first year as a child and then was working with you after in Mrs. Ashwood Stewart. So she too has been to all 20. So I want to welcome you, and this discussion that we're going to have tonight, and while we may be few in numbers in the room, we are streaming, so there are important aspects, is really to look at where we're coming from, and perhaps even more importantly, I hope, to set the agenda of how we as an institution ensure that we continue to work with the government and with the private sector. Tonight we focus on government, and in particular the development agency through Vision 2030. And we are very fortunate to have Dr. Wayne Henry here as our main speaker, and Miss Emmanuel, who has been managing 2030. Principal will slip in, and when he slips in, I will slip down the steps, as he will be the main discussant of what is being put forward. He has, however, sent some of it on WhatsApp, so we will get the benefit of his input as we go along. Thank you, and I'm going to ask Miss Emmanuel, who I've actually worked with throughout this whole journey. We won't tell you how we really met, because we didn't meet over 2030. We're not saying where we met, right? So we've been together as friends a long time, and then as co-workers for quite a while. She's a hard taskmaster, and I see she has some of her Vision 2030 people here with us. In fact, one of them said to me, "Prof, I'm just letting you get past Research Day before we get back on track." So welcome, please, Liz.
Thank you, Professor Shearer, Chair of the URI Research Days, and as she said earlier, colleague and good friend. Professor Kenneth Hall and Lady Hall, former Governor General and Principal of the University of the former Principal of the University of the West Indies, and certainly the principal that I had the honor of being a student under. I'd also like to recognize Dr. Henry, Chairman and Director General of the PIOJ, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, members of our board who are here, members of academia, lecturers, colleagues, friends, students, ladies and gentlemen. My role today is quite simple. I am here to share with you in about 5 to 7 minutes, a little bit, or in a nutshell, about Vision 2030 Jamaica. There was a young man, when I was sitting down there a little while ago, a young man was reading the documents that you would have gotten. So I hope I wouldn't bore you too much this afternoon, because I think you now have a good grasp of what Vision 2030 is. Vision 2030 Jamaica was, are you all hearing me properly? Because I'm hearing up back. Okay. Right, it's fine.
Somewhere around.
Yeah, they're not hearing me well, but you are.
They're hearing you?
Yes. Approved by Parliament in 2009, Vision 2030 Jamaica is our country's first long-term strategic development plan, and it's intended to put Jamaica in a position to advance sustainable prosperity by 2030. And it's based on the vision statement, and I'm sure everybody here knows the National Vision Statement. Everybody? So let's all say it. It's not many of us, but let's all say it for the diaspora who are looking, who this is being streamed to. Jamaica, the place of choice, don't be shy, to live, work, raise families, and do business. It's our national vision, so we have to be proud of it. The vision statement, though, embodies this very clear message that emerged from an inclusive planned development process and really and truly encapsulates the yearning of our people for a secure and prosperous future. Essentially, what this really means is that through the plan and the strategies and actions that are to be implemented to 2030, Jamaica is positioning itself to transform from a middle-income developing country to one which affords each of us and each of the citizens of this country a high quality of life and world-class standards in some critical areas such as education, healthcare, access to environmental goods and service, civility, and social order. And I can list and list and list, but I'll stop there. It integrates and balances economic, social, and environmental issues and is underpinned by good governance. The plan is intended to meet the needs of our present citizens without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And I'd like to pause here a little bit to say that we are all part of a future generation. We were part of a previous generation, and 20 years later we were part of what would have been 20 years before, or 21 years before the future generation. And I'd like to believe that I will be here for about 2 more generations to come. The plan is intended to create a country in which there is equity. Equitability includes everyone as both participants and beneficiaries of development, where we leave no one behind. To do this, Vision 2030 Jamaica articulates a comprehensive and integrated strategy around 4 national goals and 15 national outcomes. Each of these goals and national outcomes, when you hear them, if you close your eyes, really says to us where we want to be by 2030. So Goal 1 speaks to Jamaicans. Jamaicans are empowered to achieve their fullest potential. And right there, if we close our eyes, we can actually see what that means. But that includes world-class education and training. That's what we want by 2030. We want a healthy and stable population. We want effective social protection, for example. Goal 2, the Jamaican society is secure, cohesive, and just. And I'm not even going to, we know what we want by 2030. Jamaica's economy is prosperous. And here we're not only speaking about GDP, but we're talking about things like the ease of doing business. We're talking about our energy supply and the move to more sustainable forms of energy, such as renewable energy. We're also talking, very applicable to research days, the notion of science, technology, and innovation. And we're speaking to the competitiveness of our industry structures. We want internationally competitive industry structures, whether it's tourism, whether it's mining, manufacture, construction, etc. So the 4 goals and 15 national outcomes of Vision 2030, as you see, cover the 3 dimensions of sustainable development, with goals 1 and 2 focusing on the social, Goal 3, an economic goal, and Goal 4, an environmental goal. Sorry, I didn't mention Goal 4, which is my goal. Jamaica has a healthy, natural environment, and there we're speaking about environmental sustainability, the state of our ecosystem, so very important to economic and social development. We're speaking about climate change and adaptation to climate change, hazard risk reduction, and we're also speaking about sustainable urban and rural development. These national goals are mutually reinforcing and synergistic in design, and their achievement cannot be realized in isolation from each other. These goals and their associated national outcomes, along with the national strategies, programs, projects, and activities, collectively represent a development planning approach that is broad in scope, participatory in design and implementation, long-term in reach, and transformational in character. So let me just share a little more about the key attributes of Vision 2030. It enjoys, for example, bipartisan support. In fact, we have been praised throughout Latin America and the Caribbean for this. As many of you would have been aware, and if you read the paper on Sunday, there was an article by former Prime Minister P.J. Patterson, who said he started the process, but it was launched, the plan development process was launched by another political party. It was tabled in the House by a political party. We had a change in government, and the Vision 2030 continued. We had another change, and it continues today. And many countries come to us and say, well, how is that possible? We have, at the same time, other countries in the region in which they had their own visions, long-term. In fact, Trinidad had a long-term national development plan, but it was not bipartisan. It did not have high levels of stakeholder involvement and engagement, and as a result, with a change in political power, it was called Vision 2020. It ceased to exist. In fact, the entire Plan Secretariat at the time was dissolved to prepare a new national development plan with new persons. So our plan is underpinned by high levels of stakeholder involvement and engagement, and it also takes into account the views and aspirations of our youth and children. That vision statement that you just recited, Jamaica, the place of choice, that's coming from consultations with thousands of young people in 2005 and 2006 who were 14, 15, 16. And we're talking from Kingston, Maypen. We had a range of consultations to get from young people who by 2030 would be the leaders, what they wanted Jamaica to look like. And the truth is, they all wanted to be here by 2030. They all wanted certain opportunities, and they were the ones who fashioned that vision statement into what we know it today. Our plan is it's underpinned by a well-defined implementation framework. So Jamaica as a country has never been short of development planning. This is the first long-term plan, but it's not the first development plan. But one of the things that sets Vision 2030 Jamaica apart is that we have a well-defined implementation framework known as the Medium-Term Socio-Economic Policy Framework. But in addition to that, we have a robust monitoring and evaluation framework comprising of indicators and interim targets that tell us where we're going. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And as such, the plan is based on the notion of continuous improvement. So we learn lessons along the way, we adopt best practices, we know where we're going wrong, and therefore we can adjust along the way to make changes. It is easily aligned with key national and international frameworks, the most recent example being Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. In fact, the Sustainable Development Goals, Vision 2030 Jamaica, was one of the documents, the policy documents, that was actually used to fashion those 17 goals that we know today as the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, we have a strong focus on transparency and accountability. Those development results are made public regardless of what they look like. All right, so if we're not doing good in a particular area, those results are made public via social media, via our website, etc. So as I've said before, the plan provides a comprehensive framework in which the linkages among economic, social, environmental, and governance spheres of development are made, and introduces a new paradigm which redefines the strategic direction for Jamaica. One that moves us from the dependence on the lower forms of capital to developing and sustaining our higher forms of capital, or cultural, human, knowledge, and institutional capital stocks, to move us into the higher stages of development, but also position us to add value to the lower forms of capital, moving us into an innovation-driven stage of development. any country in the world. We have 7 stocks of capital that we can manipulate, whether it's man-made capital, natural capital, etc. What we're saying is that we need to address not the higher forms of capital, and we also need to look at adding value to our lower forms of capital, whether those, for example, be agricultural commodities. How do we add value to it? And the whole area of research, development, and innovation, as you would see, I mean, research and development is part of the higher forms of capital that we need to invest in. Just today, the Minister of Finance spoke about how much we invest in research and development, and the importance of investing in research and development if we want to get to that place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. And if we really want to achieve the levels of prosperity that is required for sustained economic and social development. As I said before, Vision 2030 Jamaica is considered a best practice in long-term development planning regionally and internationally. And we continue to have others knock on our doors to learn from us, to engage us on various aspects of development planning, visioning, national monitoring and evaluation frameworks, alignment with the SDGs, and national and implementation, among others. In fact, later this week, for the St. Lucians who may be among us or who may be viewing, we will be meeting with persons from your country as they prepare Castries Vision 2030. Today, we see Vision 2030 Jamaica as relevant as to when it was promulgated in May 2009. We're only 10 years into implementation of this 21-year plan. Many persons think that we're halfway into implementation, that we are halfway to 2030, or we are closer to 2030 than we are. I think we can safely say that our national goals and national outcomes, as contained in the plan, are still what we want, hopefully before 2030. I'm sure no one can dispute that we want a healthy and stable population, or we want to have world-class education and training, or we want security and safety, or good governance, or a stable macroeconomy, or an enabling business environment. These things all remain relevant to us today. Let me turn, as I am about to close, to the UE community. The UE community played a key and strategic role in the development of Vision 2030 Jamaica, from academic staff to students. I recall in 2005 to 2009, when we were putting together the plan, the many days and nights spent at UE working with a range of lecturers and department heads, discussing their foresight, the direction of their research, their experience on development of a particular sector, the strategies and actions we must take to advance this island of ours. I especially remember my days in what was referred to as NATSI, now Faculty of Science and Technology, and working with Prof. Kawa on the importance of science and technology and the ingredients we must have in this plan to build this innovation-driven society that we want by 2030. And there are many other examples of this. The UE family were representatives on many of our task forces, the cluster review committees. In fact, all departments of this university helped us to shape what will become Vision 2030 Jamaica. Today, we continue to work with the University of the West Indies in the implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of Vision 2030 Jamaica. And I would personally, as the head of the Secretariat and on behalf of my team, all of whom are here at this point, like to thank the university for your commitment, your strategic direction, and your continued support to this process of national development. I would personally like to thank Denise, Dr. Shearer, who called me one day last year, and said, we talk all the time, but she specifically called and said, Liz, be prepared. Research Days 2019 is going to be on Vision 2030. And I said, okay, not really taking it too seriously. But when you know Dr. Shearer like I do, you know when she has an idea, she will bring it to life and make it happen. I now take the opportunity to thank you, Dr. Shearer, and the team at UE for showcasing Vision 2030 Jamaica. I would like to welcome our principal, Professor Weber. Okay, and I'll take this opportunity to thank you and the team at UE for showcasing Vision 2030 Jamaica, the role that academia is playing, and importantly, taking the bold step this week to communicate the Jamaica we want by 2030 to all who are here and in the diaspora. As our national anthem states, "Give us vision, lest we perish." Let us continue to share the vision and strive for the Jamaica we want and work towards making our beloved country Jamaica the place of choice, wake up now, to live, work, raise families, and do business. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz, for those kind words. But I think that, yes, we wanted to showcase Vision 2030, but I think it means a lot to all of us at an individual level as well as an academic level. There are, in fact, 75 of us on this campus, 35 currently that have worked and are working with Vision 2030, and therefore all of us need a research agenda, so you have also helped us. It is my time now to slip to the right, to welcome Professor Weber and to hand over to the chair and moderator of this session. Welcome, Professor Weber. Do you wish to say something?
Yes,
and then introduce Dr. Henry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Eldemar Shearer, who has always been there for me. My apologies for being late, but you will say I was gainfully employed. I was at the Ministry of Education begging the Permanent Secretary to give us all the money that he owes us, no, the money that we need to do the things we need to do. And it went far longer than we did, but we were fairly successful, and I will talk about that in the future. However, we have the man of the moment, and you know that partnerships is what we're about. And one of our best partners in this academic year has been the PIOJ. Not only have they given us direction and given us opportunities, they've given us the questions. We've talked always about the university research going in certain places, us doing research, but research that we ask ourselves the own questions. We need to know the questions that are being asked by industry, by public and private sector, and where better to go for questions than the PIOJ. They've helped us align our research with both the Vision 2030 and the SDG goals, so that when we asked Wayne if he would be willing to speak, he jumped at the opportunity. So I think we're about to hear a lot of what we've done right, but don't worry, you're going to hear some of what we need to do. I introduce to you Wayne Henry.
Principal of the University of the West Indies, Professor Dale Weber, Professor Denise Eldemar Shearer, Head of Graduate Studies and Research and Chair of the UE Research Days, Professor Sir Kenneth Hall and Lady Hall, members of academia, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. You know, in the UK, they were having a literary festival. And the organizers decided on the last day of the festival they are going to give a prize of £500 to whoever could just impromptu give a poem, but it must end with Timbuktu. And so a well-known poet from the area, Sir J.J. Wordsworth, stood to his feet and he said, "Caravan in the desert, going all the way through, merchants were traveling 2 by 2, carrying gold and silver and spices too. And their destination was Timbuktu." And everybody say, "Yay, excellent." And they're about to give him the prize until a Jamaican in the audience. So hold on, £500? And he stood to his feet. And he says, "Me and my friend Tim, I chill out for a few. Some bad man draw we down close to the zoo. They were 3 and we were 2. Me buck 1 and Tim buck 2. Let me get serious on the matter at hand. On behalf of the board, some of whom are members of the UE family, members and staff of the PIOJ, I extend heartiest congratulations to the University of the West Indies, UE, Mona, on another year of hosting its research days. And we congratulate you on this year, 20th year of hosting this event and showcasing the work of the university, your products and other offerings, and importantly, you're partnering with other stakeholders to showcase their work. The cutting-edge research being undertaken here at UWI provides solutions for local, regional, and international issues and influences global development. We are especially pleased that this year you have partnered with the PIOJ, and in particular, Vision 2030 Jamaica. It is evident that you understand the invaluable and unique role that you play in advancing the development prospects of our country. As a regional university, you are also able to position yourself to share our best practices and lessons learned from our development pathway. So let me begin by reiterating my topic today, the role of academia in national development, making our Vision 2030 a reality. You would have heard briefly from Ms. Emmanuel that Vision 2030 Jamaica is our country's first long-term national development plan. We are in the 10th year of implementation of this 21-year plan, Vision 2030 Jamaica. Put another way, it is Jamaica's framework for achieving sustainable development and inclusive growth that engages all Jamaicans, whether at home or abroad, in the national development process, and provides all with equitable opportunities to benefit from the fruits of our labor and outcomes of development. You have been apprised of the main features and goals of Vision 2030 Jamaica, and I'll further the conversation by speaking to our role in making this vision a reality, and particularly the unique role that academia occupies in creating the conditions necessary for us to successfully implement the strategic roadmap that it helped to create in Vision 2030 Jamaica towards the achievement of our 2030 goals, and more importantly, the Jamaica we want, a Jamaica where we leave no one behind. The role that academia has in the advancement and achievement of national development, and more so, sustainable national development, is indisputable. According to Ban Ki-moon, former Secretary General of the United Nations, I quote, "Sustainable development is a pathway to the future we want for all. It offers a framework to generate economic growth, achieve social justice, exercise environmental stewardship, and strengthen governance," end quote. Academia plays a central role in this regard by informing the ideologies, development paradigms, and values that we pursue as a nation, providing multidisciplinary and multidimensional expertise in a wide range of critical areas for nation building, increasing the stock of knowledge, supporting evidence-based decision-making, supporting the development of our human capital through the provision of higher-level education and through its scholarship and pragmatic endeavors, which inform the content and modes of delivery from the early childhood to secondary and post-secondary levels of education. So what lessons have we learned as institutions and as a people to ensure that we fully engage the offerings and potential of academia in securing a better Jamaica, a more prosperous Caribbean, and a better world for all? From a global historical context, the engagement of academia in efforts towards national development is long established and can be readily traced to the origins of modern systems of government, the writings of ancient philosophers, and the advancement of rationalism and science as the approach to explaining and understanding society to achieve orderly development. The ideas, research, discoveries, writings, and social critiques of academia laid the foundations for the establishment of modern democracy and participatory governance, economic and trade ideologies, social organization and organizational models such as bureaucracy, and the strategic underpinnings of achieving sustainable development and inclusive growth. Academia, including faculty and students, has played an indispensable role in providing knowledge-based and revolutionary fuel in advancing the development of independent nation-states, working with the political directorate, government, private sector, civil society, and citizenry in articulating and defining questions and answers about identity, self-governance, models for social and economic development, and visions for the future. The movement towards independent thought and Caribbean freedom, a phrase I've borrowed from the title of one of the works of Caribbean scholar Lloyd Best, represents the influence of Caribbean academia in determining and manifesting what it means to be Caribbean, as we own the lessons from our past in charting the future. This has been the Jamaican experience, as it is within this context that the Central Planning Agency, now the Planning Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ, was established in 1955 as part of developing the institutional framework to drive Jamaica's development. Throughout its history, the PIOJ has pursued a mandate of informing and advancing the development of policies and plans of government through research and statistical and other analyses. These have been manifested in theories of change and statistical and applied models for development and their translation into development programs and projects that are strategically aligned with global, regional, national, and local realities. The demands on and requirements of the Planning Institute of Jamaica and the wider state apparatus has transitioned and evolved over time. This evolution has been informed by the development needs of the Jamaican people and rapidly changing global realities and technological and scientific advancements, which have required adaptations of key institutions to effectively function and compete in an increasingly globalized world. In 2006, the government of Jamaica mandated the PIOJ to lead the process of developing a long-term national development plan to advance the country's development prospects in the social, economic, and environmental spheres, a mandate that is aligned to the PIOJ Act, which directs the agency to provide the country with strategic direction with respect to long-term development planning. This planned development process, underpinned by high levels of stakeholder engagement and an intense planning period over 2 years, led to the formulation of the country's first long-term national development plan, Vision 2030 Jamaica. The plan provides a roadmap to achieve sustainable prosperity for all Jamaicans by 2030. It is designed to transform Jamaica from a middle-income developing country to one which affords our citizens a high quality of life and world-class standards in critical areas such as education, healthcare, access to environmental goods and services, and integrates and balances economic, social, and environmental issues, and is underpinned by good governance. Academia played a pivotal role in shaping this 21-year strategic roadmap and our country's long-term national goals and vision, and continues to serve as a key partner in the plan implementation process. In the plan development phase, these contributions included collaborations within stakeholder-driven task forces in providing the evidence-based underpinnings and technical expertise in the formulation of the strategic framework for the development of sectors consistent with the 4 goals and 15 national outcomes, leading to the production of 31 sector plans. Also, academia contributed to the development of the National Outcome Indicator Framework, which facilitates objective measurement of development results and comprises high-level outcome impact indicators across the 15 national outcomes and regionally and globally benchmarked targets. As we implement Vision 2030 Jamaica, academia has contributed evidence-based research data and statistics on social, economic, and environmental development performance, regional and global trends, and knowledge-based and other tools for continuous improvement of the plan implementation process, building on successes and addressing gaps. The University of the West Indies has been our closest partner in academia in the building of the institutional framework for Vision 2030 Jamaica, and specifically the multi-stakeholder thematic working groups, TWGs, responsible for the monitoring and evaluation of plan implementation. Members of academia, and primarily from UWI, form part of the membership of our TWGs. And I take this opportunity to highlight that the Vice Chair of the TWG for Governance, Dr. Iris Skoberg, is a sitting lecturer in the Department of Government. The co-chairs for the Science, Technology and Innovation TWG, Professors Ishenkumba Kawa and Errol Morrison are active members of the UWI community who led the TWG last year to produce the draft national STI policy. And Professor Denise Eldemeyer-Shearer, who needs no introduction, serves as the chair of the Health Research Subcommittee of the Health TWG. The subcommittee is mandated to develop a 10-year survey plan for health, aligned with the National Health Research Agenda. The committee is also pursuing the establishment of a central repository of health research. The role of academia in the pursuit of sustainable national development is not only linked to the plan of the day. The academic community, driven by a sense of duty, a commitment to advancing the knowledge base and development of human capital, has and continues to provide world-class accredited higher education programs to Jamaica, the region, and the globe. This relentless pursuit of excellence was recognized just recently as UWI was ranked in the top 5% among the world's top institutions by the 2019 Times Higher Education (THE) World University Rankings. This ranking is not surprising, since academia has played a central role in the development, explanation, and application of knowledge and research in advancing Jamaica's and the Caribbean's development and facilitating Jamaica's rise as a critical development partner in the regional and global arenas. Academia provides access to a vast storehouse of knowledge through its global community of faculty and learners, and leads in the development of scholarship, knowledge sharing, providing consultancy services in research, policy development, and other national development-related endeavors. It also lends expertise through engagement in stakeholder consultative processes. We see tangible representation of this in the following, which are but a few examples of the direct contribution of academia to the achievement of Vision 2030 Jamaica and national development through research and the provision of technical expertise. 1. Academia contributes to the development of each medium-term socio-economic policy framework, MTF, as you heard mentioned, in identifying the strategic priorities that should be pursued in each successive 3-year period from 2009 to 2030 to advance the achievement of our 2030 goals. Academia also plays a central role in the development of policies and programs that are aligned to Vision 2030 Jamaica to advance the achievement of the national outcomes and/or strategic imperatives associated with the outcomes. 2. In 2017, a multidisciplinary team led by Professor Aldry Henry Lee and Dr. Arlene Bailey, principal and co-principal investigators, prepared the country's first Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) country report. The team also contributed to the development and delivery of the country's first Voluntary National Review (VNR) report at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum (HLPF) in July 2018. 3. The State of the Jamaican Climate Report 2015, which provides a concise overview of data and information on Jamaica's climate. The report was jointly prepared by the PIOJ under the Pilot Program on Climate Resilience, PPCR, Improving Climate Data and Information Management Project, the ICDI-MP, and the University of the West Indies, UWI, the Climate Studies Group. It builds on the core data in the previous report of 2012 and is a first reference point with respect to parameters such as rainfall, temperature, sea level rise, and solar radiation, important for all the work being undertaken in climate proofing our sectors. And I see Professor Taylor here, and we recognize his efforts in this regard. Number 4, the growth inducement strategy for Jamaica in the short and medium term, that's 2011 publication, was prepared by a team led by former Director General of the PIOJ, Dr. Gladstone Hutchinson, and a member of academia himself, along with lead consultant David J. Harris, Professor Emeritus of Economics at Stanford University. An assessment of the implementation and impact of this growth inducement strategy was completed in 2018 by Professor David Tennant of UWI. And I recognize Professor Tennant here. Academic work has influenced the legislative ban on single-use plastics, which is owing to our understanding of the effects of plastic pollution on our environment and society, and our responsibility to safeguard our people and fulfill our obligations under global agreements, and recognize the work of Professor Mona Weber in this regard. And of course, the acclaimed Jamaica Moves program, which responds to data and statistics showing the consistent increase in the rate of non-communicable diseases, NCDs, within our society and the associated risk factors. We also see tangible representations of academic influences in other areas. For example, in our focus on job creation, a key tenet of our growth strategy, which demonstrates recognition that we are at a stage in our demographic transition where we have a large working age population, decreasing child population, and increasing elderly population, and are therefore required to implement strategies to engage the citizenry in meaningful and sustainable income earning and employment, and to reap the potential dividend from a large working age population. Importantly, the knowledge and theory-based underpinning of the offerings of our tertiary level institutions have produced graduates with the capacity to engage research, theory, and applied knowledge to produce models and pragmatic tools for development. Many of the graduates of UWI and other local tertiary institutions have made indelible marks in Jamaica's government service and advancing Jamaica's development in their efforts at home and also abroad. The PIOJ is proud to have many of these graduates among our staff. With a strong academic community playing an integral role in nation building, it is not surprising that Jamaica has been recognized as a leader in the region and among small island developing states, SIDS, in key areas, such as 1, national development planning, marked by our Vision 2030 Jamaica National Development Plan, which is recognized regionally and globally as best practice. 2, the high level of alignment of Vision 2030 Jamaica with the 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and commitment to the wider post-2015 development agenda, which includes the Paris Agreement and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda on Financing for Development. 3, advancing the SIDS Accelerated Modalities of Action, Samoa Pathway. 4, official statistics led by the work of the Statistical Institute of Jamaica, in which, according to the World Bank, Jamaica enjoys a fairly high level of statistical capacity, about 77.8 out of 100, with 100 being the highest, on par with Latin America and the Caribbean, and well above the average for small island Caribbean states, which is at 69.5. And 5, advancing replicable models for social, cultural, economic, environmental, and sectoral development. It is evident that we have achieved, at a minimum, commendable progress in developing and operationalizing our Vision 2030 Jamaica, tangibly demonstrating what Jamaica has to offer in advancing the development agenda of our region and global community, and advancing Jamaica's nation brand. But what more is needed to ensure that we achieve our Vision 2030 Jamaica and the goals and national outcomes therein, and what specific collaborations and contributions are required of academia? We require access to a repository of scholarly work and the outputs of continuous knowledge construction produced by academia to inform the strengthening of strategic frameworks to advance sustainable development and inclusive growth, equity, effective governance, and transformational leadership, to drive the development of an economy that relies on the higher forms of capital, cultural capital, human capital, knowledge and institutional capital, and develop consensus on an institutionalization of core and transformational values. We require that your academic programs, education and training make available competencies and technical expertise in our human resource to meet our development needs. Academia has a recognized duty to advance scholarship and expand the knowledge base while critically examining the functions of our institutions, including government, for both explanatory and prescriptive purposes. Academia is critical to the processes of innovation, discovery, and creation. As I think of innovation, I think of Dr. William Lawrence, recognizing. It is academia that has historically helped us see things differently as we expand our understanding of the planet and solutions to advance our sustainability. Also, I would like to highlight a few areas of work to advance our development that requires the continued involvement of academia. One, Jamaica is in the process of establishing a coordinated national statistics system, NSS, as there are significant gaps in the quality of data available to inform and monitor and evaluate national and local level development, specifically Vision 2030 Jamaica, the SDG global indicators, and local level sustainable development plans. We face several challenges, including the timely production of statistics and statistical reports, effectively engaging technology to improve data collection, processing, analysis and management, mining and archiving, inadequate data and statistical capacity in most sectors, and inadequate data literacy in the populace. We need your support here. I know somebody's taking notes. Two, the alignment of education and training with our labor market and development needs has been and continues to be a strategic priority with recognizable gaps to address. While Jamaica is pursuing an aggressive program of upskilling and certifying the population, including improving the quality of teacher education and access to education and training at all levels, we are at present challenged by resource constraints, gaps in capacity, high levels of migration, and insufficient incentives being given to the labor force. We need you to work with us in these areas. Three, as we work towards ensuring that our industry structures, such as tourism, agriculture, mining, manufacturing, construction, etc., become internationally competitive, your research here is paramount to meeting our development needs in such areas as cleaner technologies, energy efficiency and conservation. And here we applaud the UWI Net Zero Energy Building, the first in the Caribbean and a prototype for small island developing states, climate change adaptation, infrastructural development, sustainable consumption and production, and the green and blue economies, among others. Four, working with us to better communicate Vision 2030 Jamaica and the role that both academia and the wider society must play in achieving the Jamaica we want. I pause here to applaud UWI and your foresight in focusing this 20th staging of UWI Research Days on Vision 2030 Jamaica. And we pause here to applaud. That's what they call a strategic pause. Five, we need your help in defining evidence-based strategies and models to address our many development challenges that remain, be it in the areas of education and training, productivity, crime, or social cohesion. How do we move forward? Let me share with you some proposed prescriptions. One, the PIOJ commits to strengthening its partner framework and will increase its efforts to engage our academic institutions in strategic partnerships and strengthen those already existing in our TWGs and under special initiatives such as engaging graduate students of SALISES in monitoring and evaluation. Two, the PIOJ further commits to champion the continued support of academic inquiry, knowledge construction and research towards the promotion and institutionalization of a culture of evidence-based decision-making in national development planning. Let us work together to develop the national research agenda to achieve the Jamaica we want and to enable us to reach an innovative-driven stage of development. 3, let us consider a joint UE-PIOJ Memorandum of Understanding, which would, among other things, allow us to prepare a joint research agenda with key focal areas aligned to the Vision 2030 Jamaica National Development Plan, and a timeline for the implementation of the research agenda. Seek joint funding for the implementation of the research agenda and utilize existing international, regional, and national networks to access funding and specialist skills for its implementation. 4, let us explore an exchange or peer-to-peer learning program where academia, your lecturers work with us at the PIOJ through internships and mentorships for, say, 3 to 6 months on policy and development planning and understanding government processes and procedures. And let our technical experts come to you for 3 to 6 months and join the ranks of lecturers, and through courses and seminars, share our vast technical expertise and experience in policy development and planning with students. I believe this sort of learning is critical in this new development pathway and will build institutional and technical capacity in both organizations. Such an initiative will expand and strengthen the current relationship that we have with the Department of Economics, whereby in some years we are invited to engage master's level students in an internship to fulfill part of the master's program in economics. 5, we urge academia and the citizenry to support state efforts towards improving our information systems and attempts to understand the state of the nation and its people to inform how we target and apply our resources in promotion of sustainability and inclusion. This requires us to be inquiring and critical, and our academia to support the development of these skills in students and the broader community, including the educational curricula from the early childhood to the secondary and post-secondary levels towards engaging state systems for the management of data and service delivery, and providing the data that inform the statistics on our population and living conditions, and social, economic, and environmental development, including the state of housing and security of tenure, education and training, our industries, employment, the labor market and productivity, rural and urban infrastructure, and the environment. And 6, we challenge academia and our students, in particular, to develop relevant methodologies and technology-based tools for engaging informatics and big data, statistical programming, and other elements of data science within the context of small island developing states. Our most recent results show improvements in various aspects of development: human capital, social protection and inclusion, economic stability, growth and employment, public sector efficiency and effectiveness, among others. We thank UE and academia in general for working with us and all stakeholders in advancing the Jamaica we want. Let us remember the words of anthropologist Margaret Mead, herself a member of academia, and I quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has," end quote. Let us be that small group. Jamaica is on the path to a sustainable future, and let us all continue to work together to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business, and retire, die, and rest in peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Henry. The last piece is a new coinage, yes?
It's a new coinage.
Okay. So we will just add that to the slogan as we go along. There are people who tell us that research days are not worth what we put on. And having worked with it for a number of years, I know that to be totally false. So last year we decided we'd start sowing some seeds. What you see here today is a seed that was sown last year when we reached out to the PIOJ to say, would you partner with us? Oh, we were inundated. We had an invitation to come and sit to put together our strategic plans. We had invitations to put together our research agendas. We had to play catch up. We had to chase behind PIOJ, and then we realized that yes, this can work and we can replicate this. So our best partnership, I would say, out of our last year research days is what we have seen here in terms of how we've been able to stitch together. I mean, I listened to Dr. Henry and I look back at my notes, because in the beginning we thought, okay, there are just a few of us who are taking part in this in the PIOJ and its organization. But he called some names here: Schoberg, Kawa, Morrison, Taylor, Weber, Tennant. But do you know that there are 51 members of the UWI community who worked at the beginning of the process? There are 30 now involved, and there are 18 who are committed to continue from where we are. So I think this is a partnership that is going to go places. I did tell you that we will get some notes about what we've done well, and we also have some prescriptions as to what we ought to do. Before I talk about those prescriptions, I'd like to invite any questions that there are from the audience, because I saw people taking copious notes. Yes, Wayne, they were taking a lot of notes, because he kept giving them. He's a good school teacher, and he puts in these 5 points, and you know what the 5 points are. These 6 things, and you list what the 6 things are. So I'll take questions from the audience before I say a few words about how I think we can bring this to the next level. Any questions? There's a floor mic. Can I ask you to just come up to the mic and ask any question you would like? There's so few of us, you know, you can't be shy.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Henry, the idea of academia contributing to development, one of the challenges I presume has always been funding of research. Also, do you think how important it is for private sector entities to look into funding research at the academic level?
Thank you very much for the question, and a very good question. So, one, research is critical, and I think, as we outlined, unlocking expertise and focusing efforts, harnessing technology, etc., to shift the paradigms of exploration and discovery for what is possible. I think we are doing ourselves an injustice where we don't engage more in research. And of course, in our experience in Jamaica and the region, many industries are replete in areas. In agriculture, a lot of research takes place. In the science sector, quite a bit. In industry, many industries are seeing research, but obviously not enough, and funding has been a constraint. And some of our private sector entities have contributed in areas, but obviously we would, and I think we'll all agree, not enough, not easily enough. I think one frontier would be how we would do applications in big data analytics, and even now we are having discussions, early discussions at PIOG and trying to coordinate elsewhere about bringing some of those applications in Jamaica. So it's early days, but you'll hear more about that in terms of, we have avenues and pockets of big data in terms of pools, and how we can move in that paradigm of technology-driven data harvesting and applications. But it's going to be costly, and then we'd want to see more. Historically, I would argue, in my short history, though the landscape of private sector development, the environment did not necessarily lend itself, and it would warrant more discussion, but it didn't necessarily lend itself to much research, initiative and engagement. The types of environments that existed were about trying to explore low-hanging fruit of establishing trade markets for export trade regionally and internationally, trying to navigate a local private sector environment for business, if you will, that was characterized by quite a bit of what we would call macroeconomic imbalances. So trying to navigate business strategy in an arena of, high interest rates, narrow sector base, the lack of more diversification. So some of the challenges that we've outlined very eloquently, I think, over the years as a country on what the constraints have been to all further in our economic growth and development. And as industries engage in those processes within, I would argue that, could have been sort of distracted by that, navigating in that environment without having the luxury of being able to exhale and engage in more, out of the box, forward thinking, envelope pushing endeavors. And similarly, I think as a former academic, we've always been engaged in research, but the type of research that would engage and interface and transform industry and push national development. We've seen it in pockets, and UWI has certainly contributed tremendously in that way. But I think we've been wanting to see more in terms of that space and more engagement in that space. And I think, where you look in other jurisdictions where academia partners with private sectors and university partners with, the private in different entities to push through agendas. And we are doing that more, clearly and commendably. We are doing that more, establishing chairs and programs and with private sector. But we'll argue not enough. And we've started discussion. We resuscitated some 2 years ago, just harnessing a national research agenda. You'd have heard us mention. And when we saw a lot of what was coming in, it was encouraging to see the scope of all that was coming in. And we were helping to filter and target it according to the strategic priorities of the government, the national priorities, and according to Vision 2030 long-term development priorities, to harness that body of all that was being done in specific ways. But we think funding will be critical. And I think as private sectors now moves into another frontier of this era that started, really touted about 2012 when we came out of the Great Recession, into this era of private sector-led growth, recognizing that many countries globally were challenged by some of the same structural imbalances, high indebtedness, many of the small island states and governments were constrained, having to do the same types of consolidation efforts that we have been undertaking here in Jamaica, that we had to look, and these countries have to look more to the private sector to drive a lot of the funding and resource allocations to push through these initiatives. Then we'll expect to see in this era that the private sector, we'd hope, would step up more, right? And so I think that's very key. Yeah, there's more I could say about that, but thank you for the question, and easily we could discuss some more.
And William, how did you know I was going to call on you? Because you and Arlene are the two persons I was going to call on next to us, so I'm glad you volunteered yourselves. Thank you. Back mic, floor mic? Yeah, there you go.
Vision of 2030 is unfolding in the era of the fourth industrial revolution, which we know involves the interplay of a wide range of technologies. Some will say that a multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary approach that we are exposing comes easy to the pedagogy because part of the pedagogy is giving. What would be your few tips for the country, for organizations and individuals to bring themselves to get on board, to work cross-functionally and multidisciplinary in this era of the fourth industrial revolution to accelerate
Thank you very much for that, Bill. A very good question. Easily one of the distinctive competencies of the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the PIOJ, has been that integrated, coordinated, sort of multidisciplinary approach that we bring to all the things we do. And so we speak of sustainable development, and the three dimensions of sustainability are, we think of economic, environmental, and social. And in one space, we have the requisite expertise with the environmental, the social, and the economic. And so if we are doing policy prescriptions, if we are doing any work, impact analysis, if we are doing, the plan processing, if we are doing, long-term development planning from the plan development and implementation phases, we bring that to bear that has the purview and input of persons across a range of disciplines. And we've been commended, in my short time that I've been there, I've been privileged to hear commendation and to receive on behalf of the PIOJ, which I do pass on to the team, from the various sectors, government, cabinet, the directorate itself. In terms of private sector, we were presenting at the board of the PSOJ, and when it was a manufacturers association, and they interrupted, they said, listen, this work, what you're doing, and the quality of work, and I don't take that lightly. And my team will tell you that, but we take time to acknowledge that. I think a lot of times in public sector, a lot of times generally, but especially in public sector, sometimes it's a thankless job. And I think one of the roles as a people manager and a people leader is to convey appreciation. A lot of what the PIOJ does and the quality of outcome and output is because of the quality of persons there and their willingness to work together. So it requires a few things, Bill. It requires, one, a recognition that you can't go this alone. A lot of times we can be in terms of myopic and narrowly focused and short-sighted when we don't value each other and what the other person brings. Sure, you bring value. Everybody brings value. But it's a collective bringing of value. It's that collective value add that enhances the quality of output. And I think that's very key. A government needs an active opposition. Oh, I feel, if I was in another place, I feel like preaching now, but we all bring value, and for the system to maximize efficiency and value, everybody has a role to play, and that's why the voice of the youth and academia and practitioners, NGOs, civil society, union, everybody has a part to play. And it requires us all, for the best output, for us all to be on top of our game. If I look at one lens, I have to be broad in my thinking as one individual, as one practitioner. Because a broad thinking doesn't necessarily mean I have the requisite expertise to address all that I'm seeing. But the broad thinking recognizes the need for that expertise. And I think it's that recognition that's very important. As we are called to be forward-thinking, to be proactive, what we say now, to lean forward as we go forward in terms of development, progress and advancement, we have to be thinking broadly. We have to look at the risks in terms of, as an economy, as a country is going to develop, it's more than just economic development. And that's why we speak of dimensions of sustainability. So I'd say is that it requires anyone giving oversight, anyone giving and serving in a coordination function, to have that recognition that all players are brought together. And so it requires even a recognition of that coordinating function, right? That allows, and it speaks of a security, it warrants a self-confidence, and I can use that term for individuals as well as institutions, that you are confident enough to invite the input of others and not be threatened by insecurity that precludes, right, and remains narrow enough. I think there is so much for Jamaica, and we have advanced tremendously, and we hasten to say we still have a ways to go. But we have to recognize that we've advanced tremendously. And I think a lot of that is in large part because we've had that collaboration. Our Vision 2030 Jamaica National Development Plan has enjoyed bipartisan support across government, and that has served, I think, in a huge way for the advancement therein. Our medium-term economic program, this economic management program, when we signed on with the IMF, a borrowing relationship that we re-engaged in 2010, was continued in 2013 with the EFF, Extended Fund Facility, continued in 2016 when we got into the precautionary standby arrangement. And even as governments changed, there was still a commitment to the program. There was consensus on what was needed, and there was cohesion and a general moving in the same, and I think that in large part has contributed to the advancement. Some of the challenges we see in environmental management is some of the challenges have been because we haven't had that shared buy-in, where even some have been like voices in the wilderness crying out. And even those who should be owners of the process and drivers of all the processes required are not sharing and buying into that same process. I understand what I'm saying, in speaking to the need for coordination and integration. And so I think we're going to advance in any area. You're hearing for calls of committees for crime, because as we identify this as a national problem, it affects everybody. Even if it doesn't affect everyone the same, it affects everyone negatively. Yeah, and we have to come together. So I appreciate the question, and so for us to continue to advance. And can I suggest, it also speaks now to intergenerational transfer. That as young people are coming up, because one thing of millennials, they are more entrepreneurial, they are more enterprising and engaging, more risk takers. And sometimes that may require that they are more, right, they are willing to go on their own. But as we transfer the gains and the value we see in integration, it will be something that they are seized with to continue to promulgate that value.
Thank you. I see another question at the mic. Technology is a funny thing, you know. I didn't know we were streaming until Denise said, I'm saying, gee, pity such a small crowd. And she says, don't worry, we're streaming. And minutes later, I get a WhatsApp from a friend who has a friend in New York who is seeing this, who asked, what are big data and how can we work together? But anyway, your question first.
The opportunities for the university to work more closely together with Vision 2030 and so on. Maybe we have two ways. When can you expect the MOU to be in place and the peer-to-peer arrangement? When is that expected to start?
So thank you very much, and Paul, I'm not playing around.
So this is a joint answer now?
Yes, joint answer. All right, go. 1, 2, go.
Tomorrow.
I was going to say something a little more like. But the good news, Pauline, is that the engagement is close, as you've heard me elaborate, including even at the board level, strong engagement, and we continue. And we've had initial discussions around the matter, and there is that shared and collective buy-in. So it's just a matter of us streamlining the process. But you can imagine, we are big on results, and we are big on outcome. We are outcome-oriented, so we'll have that in short order.
And my answer is, so under our new access alignment agility, if we want greater access to university research, we found it. If we want alignment with a goal, say we never had a goal, and we wanted somebody else's goal to guide us, we found it. What we need now is to plug the agility. Graduate students, I mean, one of the things I've heard here, which is music to my ears, is let's use graduate students to do a lot of that research. A discrete pocket of information can be gathered by a graduate student, comes back from many places to create a wholesome body. We need to do that in a more functional and aggressive way, use that to be agile. We've done it in terms of we no longer have to wait on a thesis to be produced. That's what people used to say in the past, you know. Well, now I work with the university because it takes too long, 7 years to wait on the thesis. Now you have thesis by manuscript where you can research, publish, research, publish, research, publish, and sometime later pull together all the different papers so that we can give that published document and it becomes part of the repository. It works with those who are working with us. So I'm prepared to put my head out there and say, using our Mona Office for Research and Innovation, as soon as we're through with research days, we will be down in your office, Wayne, trying to find a way to sign that MOU.
Thank you. Thank you. So quickly to the colleague joining on by streaming, and in my limited way, and I'm not the big data expert, but big data is what it sounds like: large volumes of data, large volumes of information that can be captured. With the advancement of technology, the ability to process, the ability to store, the ability to capture data has rapidly increased. So we can do so much more now. Storage is going into cloud space now. You're going into now, by quantums, your ability to harness and apply and mine and process large volumes of data. Data so large, and so that as you get access to the large volumes of data, and we say, for example, if you look at our Registrar General's department and all that they capture, tax administration, those data on a population, large volumes of data. Traditionally, your traditional PC and CPU processing units could do only so much, but because of the technological advancements, we are able to do so much more. And blockchain applications is just one example of how they apply big data, where persons can be in remote locations, they have to be in the same space, and can verify data from all over the place. And the verification, which speaks to data integrity, allows you to do so much more. And so you can do better in terms of more quality, in terms of information being captured, accuracy. You can think of transformation in the financial sector. You can think of spatial data, geospatial, and all the planning in the environmental space. So much can happen. And so I know the person in New York is probably a big data specialist and just wanted to say, here's this gentleman in Jamaica talking about big data. What is it really? And so we are thinking, as you are hearing us, that there are many applications and potential benefits for countries like Jamaica, for many countries, and particularly for small island developing states that are smaller in size and capacity in many areas, but applying advantages through big data applications can help us to leapfrog and even move forward in a more rapid way in economic development and social and environmental development. Thank you for that.
And remember that once you have access to the information, how you choose to interpret it and reinterpret it becomes a constant new source. I mean, the computer that we got in through the project, the PPCR project, changed a model that used to run in physics that used to take 6 months to give us data is now being run in 6 minutes. It changes the whole perception. You could do it over and over. You could try it and say, well, that wasn't going to work. If you had a 6 month wait, you try it, you don't really want to try a second time. So it opens many more possibilities, and we need to take advantage of it. Your question, sir?
Okay, so thank you very much, Wendell, for the question. And so how is it that we've had sluggish growth for such a long time, and we are seeing quite a bit happening in tourism, construction, and you said the financial services sector? Though Jamaica's growth, and by growth we're speaking now, economic growth, the history, and Sir Kenneth and myself were just saying, where Minister this morning was quoting, saying the growth average for Jamaica over the last 30 years could have been just less than 1%. And many persons say, well, anemic growth. And while we've seen it pick up, and we are very encouraged by what we've seen in the recent years, over the last 6 years, we are encouraged. We still say we have a ways to go. But a lot of that history of low or what we call anemic growth has been as a result of many factors. And while I speak of macroeconomic imbalances, thank you for your question to give a chance to explain. We've had just a few, I don't want to take up the time, but we've had a high level of public debt, or a high level of indebtedness would mean for the average person, somebody goes and they say, well, I'm going to borrow money, right, to acquire an appliance. A refrigerator, I'm going to borrow to get a TV, I'm going to borrow for my car, and I'm going to pay rent on a house. Because I have these obligations, even though I get a job and I'm happy with the job and the salary that I get, I'm excited about, out of that salary goes money to pay for the refrigerator and the appliances, the car, the house. And what I have left is a function of how much I've had to pay out. As a country, to run an economy, to run a country, to provide social services and to improve quality of life, we've been stymied, we've been hindered by our high indebtedness, meaning that we have to have this obligation to service, to pay large amounts of money for the high debt with not as much left over, to do what we would call just beyond servicing, paying public sector and servicing economy, fixing hospitals, roads and so. Those capital expenditures of infrastructure development, the things that private sector like to partner with to help to grow an economy, those monies have been limited. And so as countries are so constrained, then that has been a huge issue. Another huge issue is the issue of our susceptibility to exogenous shocks, largely climate impacts. So even though we have seen improvements and tourism has done well for Jamaica, tourism has also itself been hindered because the tourism, as I said, the spaces for tourism, sand, sun, beach, etc., are in those spaces that have themselves been susceptible to climate impact. So the hurricane impacts the tourist sector negatively. And we've had, because of our position where we are in the hurricane belt and our susceptibility to flooding, etc., not just us, but many small island states in the Caribbean also, you've seen what happened the last 2 years, we have been so hindered. Agriculture has been an area where we've seen growth, but again, that is a very fragile, if you will, sector, because we've seen that they've suffered from the vagaries of what we call climate impacts, flooding, drought, hurricane. Okay, so even though we applaud the sort of developments we are seeing, tech tourism, we like the developments in tourism, we are expanding capacity in the sector. You are building new hotel rooms. You are bringing in new flights and increased flight frequency. So not just Miami to Kingston more often, but now Italy, right? New routes and more frequency. So you are building capacity. 10 years ago, if demand for tourism services in Jamaica tripled, we really couldn't benefit. We'd be limited to how well we could benefit. We could get a price effect because demand is high, you could charge a little more, but no real sustained benefit. When you build more rooms, you are increasing the capacity of the sector. When you build more hotels, so that as demand would increase, you can absorb much more. Cruise ship, as we build out the piers and our ports, dredge the harbour, make it deeper, larger vessels can come in, that means a lot, and that speaks to capacity. So those are two areas, and we speak now, when I say tourism is hurt by climate impacts, agriculture is hurt by climate impact, it speaks of another area where we need more diversification of our economy. So we have a lot of activities going on in relatively few sectors. We're very thankful for them, the sectors and how they perform, but the truth is, as you are building a more resilient economy, you want more diversification. That's why it's important to facilitate more entrepreneurship and increase and make access to finance better. And persons who have new ideas in technology and other applications can do more. We need to do more with science and engineering and the mathematics to move these areas along. And you are diversifying the economy, that should something happen to some sectors, you have other sectors to fall back on. And so those are some areas. Crime has been a deterrent. Crime is a general drain. It's like a tax on the economy. Nobody benefits from crime. Well, somebody says except the criminal, but no, crime doesn't pay. Nobody benefits. And so the truth is, it costs business more to operate in an environment that is plagued by high rates of crime. And so we've seen improvements where the National Development, Long-Term Development Tracking on the Vision 2030 has shown that crime has been trending down over the years. I remember when we first announced to the country, people were, what do you mean? And we said, the problem is violent crime, murder, has been going up. But crimes overall, larceny and all the other things, theft, etc., those have been trending down. But again, crime is a drag on the economy. Or relatively, we wanted better outcomes in education, where we want to see persons who are more training in the sciences, in mathematics, engineering, in some of those bases, the STEM areas, to try to build out in terms of productivity. And so we think that's important. We've suffered from migration and the brain drain. Right? We speak about brain when people say, well, if somebody goes to our hotspots of the diaspora, Canada, US, UK, well, remittances come in, but can I suggest that's not the same? We are thankful for remittance inflows. We are very happy for that, but it's not the same. And so when the trained person and that capacity leaves, they benefit these destination countries, and it hurts Jamaica. And even the training that goes into training, say for example, a medical doctor, and he or she goes to a destination country, he or she migrates from Jamaica and goes to a country where they can't practice medicine. They are not certified, or they have to go through additional qualification, and so they're driving a cab. They're working in the supermarket. It's honest labor, but that's not a return on the investment that went into their training. Are you hearing me? That's what we call brain loss, brain waste. So it's not just brain drain from the country, there's brain waste, that you're not realizing the return on what you've been trained in and the resources that went into that type of training. So there are many factors, Vindel. Thank you for that. We are encouraged because we've seen the growth momentum building in recent years. We are encouraged because we are seeing a lot of those macroeconomic, those structural imbalances being corrected, being addressed. We are seeing debt that was 143% of GDP some years ago, 5-6 years ago, and it's come down now to below, it's going to be by the end of this fiscal year in another month, it should be below 100%, 96%. That is huge. And yet we've been able to grow in a context of fiscal consolidation. And that's a point that's not lost on those entities and agencies that rate countries. You've seen we've been getting steady increases and improvements in our international and investor ratings, because they're saying, and while we want more robust growth, we want better outcome, yes, and all of us should, but we are still cognizant that we are, for where we are in our development journey, to be able to compress in terms of in the public sector, to bring that compression, heavy compression of debt reduction, and that type of consolidation. We are seeing in the midst of that a lot of things emerging that are right. So we are encouraged. Thank you for that question. Thank you for that question.
If you have already started to think about it and to add greater weights to your academics who have published policy results, policy papers
I'm ready.
that could have been translated into practice in public sector. For example, our public sector is still in need of modernization, in need of to be more effective and to be more responsive. And responsive is an area of rapid implementation, for example, of policies, which I believe we are in categories we are very much behind in terms of the rate of implementation. What consideration would you be given to academics who publish and their publications translate almost immediately in impacting public policy as well as practice? And I ask this question deliberately because I'm coming on the same question that I was here 5 years prior. And the big question is, right, we have had private sector asks it, public policy analysts, practitioners ask it. Some of our best papers in top journals have attracted the leadership of less than 2% in their very field, as in peers, etc. They are not being read by practitioners. Some of them cannot be read because of the lab and understand that. Yeah. So if we are looking for and to collaborate as a university to contribute both to practice as in private sector development as well as public policy, we want to incentivize our academics.
Thank you for that question. So let me take them three things you asked them there. Professors of practice is something that university started to do exactly as you outlined. There is so much information, so much knowledge, so much experience out in the operating world that needs to come to the university or be shared with the university, and there are many ways to do this. We have short-term, because they can be as short of a semester, they can be as long as 2 years, appointments for professor of practice. It doesn't require a large outlay of funds because we're not paying for it. This is our recognition, but we do give them access to all the resources within the university, an office, a place to work from, and most importantly, an audience to work with whose thought process we would like them to engage and change. It's a wonderful way to bridge the two things, and we're about to make our first 2 appointments of professor of practice over the next 6 or so months. The incentivization of research is an important thing. And we, as you would know from a university setting, our appointments committee does its work to try and enhance the work of the institution. And we go through the process of looking at your peer-reviewed journals, we look at your impact factor, we look at who's reading you, we look at your citation index, and there are these wonderful things that we do. Since becoming principal, I have made it very clear, and we have started a process at the Mona campus, where what we call grey literature, what you may call technical reports, policy reports, things that may never find its way into high citation journals, but have an impact, they are being viewed as a part of the assessment and promotion process in the University of West Indies Mona campus. For the first time, I can't say for the first time at last. The idea here is there's a lot of work that's being done that is not going to be published. And the example I use very often is the Institute for Gender and Development Studies have done reports on gender and policy. Do you realize, well, I didn't realize, maybe you did, that there are 5 countries in the Caribbean whose gender policy, not a department, not a community, the whole country's gender policy has been shaped, written by the research in the Institute of Gender and Development Studies, but it will never make its way to a journal. We've now gone back to those to say, those are important. We need to be able to look at those, rank them as we would a high citation index journal, and give the authors the credit for what they've done. So we're doing that now. So some people who had 20 technical papers and 25 other publications who are hedging their bets, should I go up for senior lecturer, should I go up for professor? We are encouraging them, bring it, let's assess it. Now, you need to do this accurately. You can't just, not all technical reports are the same. So you need to judge that grey literature by what impact it has. So our impact rubrics now involves going to the persons or the entities or the governments who have benefited from the research to say, you tell us how important was it. Was it a little fly-by-night, or did it really change the views? Did it give us information? Did it give us facts? Did it give us opinions? How would you rate this? So we're doing that rubrics now so that we can actually apply it in the same way that we do for our standard publications. So it's making a difference, and we are using that to incentivize not just writing reports that will get you into the literature, but reports that impact, that make change. Lastly, Professor Eldemaya Shearer started something 5 years ago. It's called a policy wall. It's probably the greatest thing we've done with Research Days, because we've been putting Research Day on show. Professor Hall started Research Day in this hall, no pun intended, with a few posters. He wanted to, 1, show the public what we did, 2, have different departments talk about each other or to each other about what they did, and 3, try and show impact. Well, I hope in the 20th year, Prof, I have been able to put it all back on the table for you again. That policy wall, so the first year the policy wall was in humanities and education, and we found about 12 or 14 policies in Jamaica that were driven from research. Did you know that we only did history, European history, in the Caribbean examination system until Roy Auger and his team did the study and showed how important West Indian history was? That started to change the conversation. That policy took long. But there are a couple of other policies that showed us from history, archaeology, a number of policies that got changed based on research. The next year we did social sciences, and I didn't know that the PASS program came about because of the work of Mikey Witter and Pat Anderson. But there we have policy influenced by research. We did medical sciences, the same thing. So we've come down the line. This year, if you go into the village today, you'll find science and technology, and I'm especially pleased because that's the faculty I'm from. But I can tell you that the climate policy, Jamaica's climate policy, was written by the Climate Studies Group. How we can export nuclear material or transport nuclear material, written from ICENS. How we can export asbestos, written from within the faculty, Prof. Kawa. So there are a number of policies, the Blue and Jonker Mountains, the Cockpit Country, ballast water. There are so many examples of policies from science and technology on display this year. And this year, just to remind you, we have a retro policy wall, which has gone back and plucked a couple from before. So nobody can come to me anymore and say, what value is the university? Or what have you done for me recently? I got a long list. But thank you for the question and the opportunity to share. Are there any other questions, comments, queries? If not, then I would like to thank you for your participation. Thank you for staying the course. Thank you for the questions. But most of all, thank you, Dr. Henry, for a riveting presentation. But I can't do it properly, so I'm going to call on Dr. Marcia Roy to come and give a small token of appreciation to Dr. Henry for his work. While she's coming, I'll say 5 things. You know, I'm learning from the master. So what are we going to do next? 1, and it's strange you ask that question. I have number 1, engage researchers. Because you know one of the things I'm most afraid of? Going out there, running up my mouth and say, the university can. Come back home and can't find the research. We need to engage the researchers and we need to incentivize them. You've answered my question. Commit to transparent and consistent reporting. Because we do it and we don't put it out there often enough. Partners like PIJ actually force us to continuously report. Embrace exchange and internships. There's no better way, and the professors of practice is an example, but if we can get more of our students engaged while they're doing undergrad, while they're doing postgrad, a great thing will happen. Review our program delivery and align to the strategic development goals and the Vision 2030, because the future jobs are going to be requiring this. Some of the people who are putting out now may not find a job because that job don't exist in 10 years' time. And most of all, sign that MOU as quickly as possible. Thank you. Marcia?
Dr. Henry, on behalf of the Research Day Steering Committee, we want to thank you for your presentation this evening. The audience is few, but sometimes you just need to get to a few people to make a big difference. Okay, so this is our token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. All the best, too. Thank you.
So colleagues, we're at the end of the first day of our 3 days of Research Day. It's actually 3.5, because we did a little thing yesterday for a few members of the public and private sector who we thought couldn't come these days, and that's borne great fruit already. So I'm already, you know, feeling good. I invite you to come back tomorrow and bring your friends and your friends' friends so that they can see more of what the university is doing. Now you do realize that we have multiple sessions going on, so we have taped, we have recorded all of the sessions that we have, so that if you want to see the one you didn't attend, you can always spin back and get that recording. We'll put that on our website so you can see it. But we have 2 more days to go. I look forward to greater interaction, greater participation as the university makes its mark, driving social and economic development. Thank you very much and good evening.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. My pleasure.
That is like a prescription you bring for us. It is so perfect.